Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Pieces of China, which is a series that tells the story of China one object at a time or one thing at a time. My name is Dinda Elliott. I'm the Director of Programs at China Institute, and we are so delighted today to have Sabina Knight join us. Sabina is a professor of Chinese and Comparative Literature at Smith College. She's the author of many books, including Chinese Literature, A Very Short Introduction, which is an absolute must-read. Sabina has also translated stories, essays, classical poetry, and modern prose. But what I love most about Sabina is that across her work, she really aspires to demonstrate the relevance of literary culture to contemporary questions of law, public policy, and healthcare. Sabina is also a research associate at Harvard's Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies. So Sabina, welcome, please join me. And Sabina is going to talk about, of all things, dancing in the park. So Sabina, welcome.
Thank you.
So happy to have you. So if you visit any large park in China, particularly in the morning, you're likely to see groups of dancers and others exercising, often to music. I'm sure many of the people tuning in right now have seen this. But before we dive in, help us set the scene for our viewers who may not be familiar with this practice. What are these groups of people doing? What is this dancing in the park thing all about?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful. And thank you for everyone who is with us today on probably a busy workday. And I'm really happy to talk about dancing in the park. I'll say I'm no expert. I've participated and I love this and I've read about it some. It's not my area of expertise, but it is a passion. And I think the best way to present it is to actually show you a few little clips and photos. But just to sort of set it up, I want to begin by the enormity of this practice. Many people think there are about 100 million people in China who dance in the park and in public spaces. It isn't just in parks, it's also in squares and, you know, in the middle of commercial centers and at the sort of in front of City Hall, you know, various government buildings in different cities. And there are a lot of different types of dance, and I want to bring that out. But first, I'm just going to show you a couple of clips. And then
Perfect.
Let me share my screen.
Nothing like seeing the real thing.
Yes. Oops. Okay, so where's the podium? There we go. So I called this Dancing in the Park because when Dinda asked me to talk about something, the first thing that came to me was my love of the Purple Bamboo Park, where I did a lot of Taiji and dancing. And this is a video that a friend took of me dancing with a group. I'm going to mostly show you the group. So here's what a lot of it looks like. I am in the back.
Fabulous.
So, escape from that.
You look great, Sabina.
That's not what I meant to do. Okay. So, oops, there we go. So there's a picture of me dancing with them as well. And I will say right away, this is a wonderful way to meet people outside of the kind of professional context one might normally have. But I also want to show you the variety, the tremendous variety of this dancing. So I'm just going to show a little clip. This is sort of funny, but
广场舞这个悄然兴起的江湖秘术，不少人和我一样，也曾经有过被大爷大妈支配的恐惧。但是话又说回来，风水轮流转，如今新时代的广场舞可不再是大爷大妈的主场，不管是3岁的萌娃，还是年轻漂亮的小姐姐，3分钟控场的节奏，让你一秒爱上广场舞。
Okay, so you get the idea of that.
Fabulous.
And then so the different types, there are actually quite a few. Basically, the main thing perhaps, is that these are workouts benefiting health. But they're also, maybe I should go back to here. And
yeah, I was just going to ask you, is this about sort of social life, or is it about health, or what is it? And why is it so popular?
absolutely both. And I'll definitely address that.
Yeah.
It's workouts benefiting health. Some of them look kind of like Zumba or calisthenics classes.
Yeah.
Others are reinterpretations of Chinese folk and ethnic minority dances, including, in some cases, the Yanga, literally the sprout songs that originated in agricultural communities. And some of the ethnic dances are use big long silk fans and other beautiful ways of enhancing the aesthetics. Some of these are performances for formal events, and I wanted to talk about that because maybe a little later I'll talk about the fact that sometimes these serve propagandistic purposes or national purposes. This is also Purple Bamboo Park.
Wow.
Yeah, but obviously some of these groups even aspire to professionalism, and I'm gonna come back to this for a second. Some of these groups aspire to professionalism and even serve kind of nationalistic purposes in support of various government initiatives, but hopefully I'll address that a little bit.
This looks like tango. Is this tango?
Yeah, I was gonna say there's also in the same parks a lot of Tai Chi, a lot of Qigong, other health practices, and a great deal of ballroom dancing. And some of the people who are doing the line dancing, it's often called public square dancing or just square dancing, but it's nothing like square dancing as people in the United States would think of it. But some of the people who do it used to do Tai Chi or Qigong or this ballroom dancing, and for various reasons, they've switched. Not everyone is in this category. And some people say that if the husbands don't want to participate, some wives join the line dancers instead to avoid conflict with jealous husbands. And I also just want to say that this is not a universally beloved practice. There is some conflict with communities who in particular don't like the noise. And in Purple Bamboo Park, they even installed these monitors to keep track of the decibels that have to stay no higher than 70 decibels.
Right.
So that's kind of...
Do you sometimes have competing noise? In other words, there's one group doing one kind of dance over here and another group over there, and you've got the competing music, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so
Absolutely.
It's pretty raucous. And real now.
Yes, yes. And as a matter of fact, when they're complaining about noise pollution, they often talk about rao mean, which means literally disturbing the people.
Right.
So, and there's also some competition for space.
Okay.
With the reform and opening up after the Maoist collectivist period and all of the turbo capitalism and all of the development, there's really less and less public space. So there's also less space for people to exercise. And so this is actually one of the most economical and convenient ways for many, many people to exercise. But that's also one of the things that causes conflict, because people say they're taking over where we could do badminton. So that's also...
Well, it's interesting, I think we Westerners tend to look at this as a kind of, an amusing phenomenon that seems very foreign. But do you see a parallel in terms of the, what health and wellness in China and what practices we pursue here in the States, or do you see it as being very different?
I see a lot of overlap, and if I talk, yes, I see a great deal of overlap, in fact. Maybe And then I also see significant differences. So I think when people go to gyms and take exercise classes, such as Zumba especially, or Taiji, in similar ways, they're valuing, this is an hour and a half I have for myself. That's a really important part of this for many people. And it builds routine into one's life.
Yes.
It builds a chance to interact with other people in a way that doing a dance video at home, doesn't allow.
Absolutely, yeah.
At the same time, in the United States, when people go to gym or dance classes, because we have cars and live more spread out, when we go to those places, we may not see people necessarily in our area or who share our interest groups. And because Chinese cities are so densely populated, and most people still do not have cars, and even if they do, the traffic's terrible. So when they mostly walk to the nearest park. Right. And so they see people who are neighbors and they can easily visit one another, and sometimes do. And they often stay and socialize afterwards for at least a half of an hour. And because of the population density within one park, such as Purple Bamboo Park, which is enormous, right? It's the 7th largest park in all of China. In a place like that, there's enough diversity that people can sort of find people with similar sensibilities, similar age groups, similar demographics, similar socioeconomic status, So it is more about community. It's a more neighborhood-based practice.
And particularly so interesting that you mentioned the kind of turbocharged capitalism that everyone in China lives with. Of course we do too, but it seems to be on steroids in China, right? So that's fascinating that people are able to find a sense of community through this. Just to jump in with another question, you have said in a previous conversation we had that you see dancing in the park in a way as a sort of a social movement. What do you mean by that? Can you explain a little bit? What's the broader significance?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of broader significance. And in that, it's connected to other movement practices like Tai Chi and Qigong in the way I would frame it as a social movement. And I would also say, in part because I think I don't really see the chat, but I saw one question that said, where is Purple Bamboo Park? So I think I should address that. And I'll get into why it's a social movement. And I would say in part that I'll get to that. It's in northwest Beijing, mostly, in the Haidian district, in Haidian-Chu. But I will show you a couple of pictures of Purple Bamboo Park.
Wonderful, yeah.
Okay, so I'll say that, again, I love Purple Bamboo Park. It's one of my favorite places on earth.
Oh, great.
And I would also say that to some extent, it is a kind of social action that is a little bit countercultural to the dominant culture, just to go to a park. I mean, many people go to parks, but when you go to a park, you're saying, some people work in the park, but you're saying, I'm not going to work. I'm going to find a refuge in nature. I'm going to find other people to be with. Mm-hmm. And Purple Bamboo Park, 紫菊院公园, was certainly that for me. So Beijing's the world's 9th largest city. One spends time in traffic. One's often amidst buildings without a whole lot of nature. And so for me, Purple Bamboo Park was very much a refuge. And this is a picture of me doing a more meditative type of dance against the lily ponds. And the ponds and the lakes and the water in this park are really quite extraordinary. The park has 3 connected lakes, and together those lakes cover about 118 acres.
Wow.
And 5 bridges connect the lakes with islands and hills. And the Changhe, the Beijing Changhe, flows sort of north of the lakes. And it nourishes the water in the lakes, but these lakes were man-created. In the 16th century, the Ming Dynasty Wanli Emperor built this royal garden here. And like many classical Chinese gardens, they made a mountain water landscape. So workers actually dredged earth from the lakes in order to form these small hills on the lake's eastern side, which balanced with the natural hills on the western side. And in particular, they also planted enormous amounts of bamboo, these beautiful bamboo groves, actually, which, I guess I don't, well, you see it in that picture of me. These beautiful, beautiful bamboo groves with many, many species. Oh, there's some bamboo. With many, many species of bamboo. And the other thing is that this park was open to the public in 1954 without an entrance fee. And this is really key because many parks, many of the most beautiful parks in China have a small entrance fee. And people can sign up, can subscribe and have sort of a pass, so it's more inexpensive. But the fact that this one is free is perhaps particularly important. And the Haidian district is not as fancy as some districts. It's sort of the university district, so there are students who don't have lots of money, but there are also a lot of workers. And so this is a really special opportunity for them, an economical and convenient way for them to come together.
Wow. I wanted to just jump in with one thought, which is that, I think that we, again, tend to forget how attached China is culturally still to things like the garden culture and kind of Taoist concepts of man and nature and all that stuff that existed for thousands of years. And now, of course, they've got turbocharged capitalism, but it's wonderful to see that people and to remember that people still do, like their sort of visceral connection to what they do in some free time is they'll go to a park, which is, based on that traditional garden and the whole thing. It's all still there.
I think another part of the difference is that many of these practices are very connected to traditional Chinese medicine and a long standing emphasis on nurturing life, Yangsheng. And those Yangsheng practices, which sort of started in Neo-Taoism, 3rd century, before the 3rd century, they inhere in more obviously in something like Taiji, which I also practice and could talk a little bit about. But they also inhere in many of these dance groups. Some of the teachers explicitly link their choreography with the meridian points in the body that come from traditional Chinese medicine. And so while it's a cardio workout, it also has to do, with muscle strengthening, with stretching, but also with moving qi, moving the energy as Taiji or Qigong would do that. So there is, not all of the dance groups are like that, but some of them definitely emphasize that as well.
So fabulous. So Sabina, we're definitely going to have to bring you back for a longer talk, but I think, we're already past time, but I know that, a lot of people who tuned in today really know you for your work in Chinese literature. So I just want to quickly ask you, you said that one of your goals is to bring Chinese literature to a wider audience. And so just share with us a little bit why you think that's an important goal. Why is that important to you? And then I promise, I hope you will come back again because we need you back for a longer talk. But yeah, talk a little bit about why literature is important and how it helps us understand.
Well, I'll start maybe by saying that Chinese literature has had a particularly difficult time finding readers the world over. And this is partly a problem in translation. And one of the reasons it's there, I'm talking to the chair of the Chinese Writers Association, which is a government-sponsored organization and committed to supporting writers in China, but also spreading Chinese literature abroad. But part of this is also that translations in general in the United States are not very popular. Translations as a percentage of books of literature published in many countries are 30 to 60%. It might even be higher in China. And in the United States, it's only 3%.
Well, we're a pretty uncurious culture here in the United States, reflects a lot of things. But anyway, yeah.
And I think that of what is translated, a tiny little sliver, is Chinese. So this is a pie chart of languages translated.
Wow. Yeah.
And at this point, it's a little old. It's a little better now, but not that much. At that point, it was only 9% of the works. Yeah. And yet I really believe that reading literature in general, teaches us empathy. It widens our view of ways of living, of ways of seeing the world. And to me, reading literatures from other cultures, gives me new ideas about what literature can do, what storytelling can do, different ways of living and viewing the world. And, when someone wins the Nobel Prize, I'll often go outside of my areas and read something else. So I'm mostly a comparatist using Chinese and Russian and French and English language literature. But, when Pamuk wins the Nobel Prize and I read his novel, I feel like I'm a better person for doing so. And I believe that Americans have a lot to learn from Chinese literature and from Chinese culture. And there need to be more people bridging this gap, and in particular, people who can present it in English with an understanding of what, of how to situate it and bring it to people with those expectations, right? Not just people who are already knowing about China, who already know the history involved, the literary tradition involved. It's important to keep in mind that you're writing for, or talking to people who may be coming to this with little knowledge, but gratefully some curiosity.
Yes.
And perhaps one of the values of teaching at a liberal arts college, as I do at Smith, is that I'm always facing students, some of whom who have lots of background and some of whom who do not. So I've gotten used to kind of layering my presentations where there'll be something for people with different amounts of background and knowledge.
Right. Well, thank you so much for this today. My gosh, I mean, again, your ability to sort of bring out the sort of cultural interstitials in a way, it's sort of that cultural stuff that actually is so important and tells you so much about a society, like looking at that, the dancing in the park and learning from you about the beauty of what's it called? Zhuyuan, I guess, the Purple Bamboo Park. I mean, how fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your piece of China with us and helping to tell the story of China. And we hope so much we can get you back, Sabina. Thank you so much. And to all of you who tuned in, please become members of China Institute. Your support helps us bring brilliant speakers like Sabina. So please do join. You'll get all sorts of wonderful discounts and all that stuff, good stuff too. So we hope to see you again soon, Sabina. Thank you for this Pieces of China.
And thank you for having me. And thank you to all the people watching.
It's wonderful. Thanks. See you again.